Thanks again for being here. Thank you for bearing through the technical difficulties. I am Allie. I'm our local leader for IxDF San Diego. Um, we are part of we're a local chapter of a global organization that's aimed at making world-class UX design education accessible to everyone anywhere. San Diego, our local chapter, is all about creating space for folks designers and design enthusiasts to connect, learn, and grow together. A couple of quick notes. So tonight, our session is all about psychology as a missing discipline in AI-driven design. So definitely a very timely topic. Tiziana will be presenting, doing a little interactivity sort of with us, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. So I'd love for everyone, so we can keep on schedule, if you have questions throughout the session, please feel free to engage in the chat and drop your questions there. We will have an opportunity at the end to review these as a group. Are there any other questions before I give an introduction to Tiziana here? Great. Okay, so again, very excited to have you here, Tiziana. This is a really exciting talk, a really exciting topic. So for everyone who doesn't know, Tiziana brings a psychology-informed perspective to design and AI, helping people think more critically about the human side of systems that we're using every day. This talk will explore psychology as a missing discipline in AI-driven design. And we'll be talking about things like cognitive load, bias, ethics, responsible design decisions, and more. So again, it's a really timely topic with the way technology is developing today. I'm really glad she's going to be here to guide us through, because I couldn't think of anyone with better experience on this topic. So yes, again, thanks. Please, everyone, join me in welcoming Tiziana and getting started with our talk.
All right. Thank you, Allie. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Yeah. Everybody can see my screen? Yes? All right. So Allie's going to be actually monitoring the chat because I can't see it. So hopefully everything goes well. But if there's any issue, she'll let me know. So thank you, everyone. And again, like Ali mentioned, we're going to talk about what I think is the missing discipline in AI. And of course, spoiler alert, it's psychology. That's what we are going to be talking about. So sorry. I apologize. This is I don't know why it's not advancing. Sorry. Okay, let me try that. I don't know what that is. Uh-oh. Again, we did try that. So let me go that. I don't know what this pencil thing is. But anyway, so again, my name is Tiziana D'Agostino. I'm an assistant professor at the New School of Architecture and Design in San Diego. So I want also to welcome the chair of design and the chair, I guess, Bruce, of integrated studies from my school. So thank you for coming. I also consult as a UX psychologist, and I'm blending UX and design best practice with psychology. I'm very passionate about design, ethics, technology, and also their intersection. If I look back on my career, I always think that I made a lot of changes, but in reality, it's almost like rings in a tree. So I didn't abandon what I was doing before to do something else. I just simply add more skills, starting from basic graphic design, moving to web development, web design, and then user experience as well as psychology, and now moving more into AI and ethics. So today, what I want to talk about is going to be where we are today as far as AI is concerned, why psychology matter more than ever, and then a couple of things that you can do in practice to apply a more psychological point of view to your design as you're using those AI tools. So first of all, we need to kind of define a big term. What do we mean by intelligence? Now, people have been talking about this topic forever, scientists, philosophers, so I don't presume to have a right answer. But this is a very important question to ask, because if we're talking about artificial intelligence, we need to kind of have an idea about what we mean by intelligence. Is it just IQ? Is an emotional quotient as well? What do we really mean? And that's important because that will take us to the second question, which is AI really intelligent? Like some people say. And talking of it, what is AI? Interesting enough, a survey of 5,000 to 1,000 people in 5 different countries has been done for the past 10, 15 years, asking exactly the same question: what is AI? Now, in 2013, which is the first year the survey was given, 98% of people associated AI to some kind of dystopian ideas, crazy robot destroying the earth, which is understandable, 2013. But we are now in 2026, and the latest data, which was collected in 2025, gave us 88% of people still associate AI to dystopian ideas, even though we'll probably be using like ChatGPT or any other thing. So right now, for most people, when we're talking about AI, this is exactly what we're thinking of. So now, of course, hopefully that's not the case, but it's important to understand, because if a lot of people still think about AI as this kind of alien robot machine, that will affect how they're going to be using the tools and if they're going to be using the tools, right? Now, we all know that AI at this point in time, at least, still do hallucinations. That means it generated completely false information, but with a lot of confidence. And it's also trained to be pleasing you any way possible. Also, is basically a prediction machine, is a pattern recognition machine. So many people think that it's not really that innovative. It wouldn't be able to come up with something completely revolutionary because it just kind of mix and match different ingredients. And then, of course, there is a problem of biases. Biases, that means bring to stereotyping and things like that. And it amplifies and perpetuates biases found in human, because human created the data set those machines were trained in. So how biased is it? Right? I don't know how much you use in AI. If you have used AI before, if you have AI to create images for you, but the most basic sample you can do is open any AI you're using, and feel free to do that right now. It can be Gemini, it can be ChatGPT, any AI that can create images, including Firefly from Adobe, anyone at all. And then try to type the most simple command possible to realize what the defaults are. So I did this afternoon, and I actually typed in two different things. First, I went to Gemini. They're using Nano Banana 3 right now, which is supposed to be one of the best image creation engine. And the first question was, give me an image of a domestic worker. Once again, I left it very, very generic because I wanted to make sure I could see the defaults, right? I obviously could give you a lot more details and get exactly what I want, but I want to see the default. And I did the same thing for CEO, a CEO in the office. Are you surprised about the results? I am not. And if you're testing it right now with your own AI of choice, you're probably going to get very similar results. Maybe not exactly the same, but very similar. So when you're looking for CEO, it's usually a white male, usually middle age, in a really nice posh office. And if you're looking for a domestic worker, is usually someone like a minority group cleaning a house, and is usually a woman. Now, you may say, oh, well, because the majority of CEO are male and they're white, the majority of domestic worker probably are from minority group. But the problem here is that by doing so and repeating these stereotypes to us, they amplify them. And that means they reinforce the fact that if you're white, you'll be a white male, you will be perfect for a CEO role. If you're a female, especially a minority group, you're gonna be a house worker. Interesting enough, I noticed that even though they're so stereotypical, they don't miss the product placement. So if you look at it carefully, you can see that this woman is using a Dyson vacuum, which is pretty cool, versus the CEO is sitting apparently on an Eames chair, even though if you ever seen that this chair is really not for sitting, it's for lounging. Okay. And just in case, I tried with a different one because I want to make sure it was not just a glitch, right? So I tried with free pick. In fact, I've been doing this test on free pick since 2023. And the result are always the same. It's been 3 years, but every time you type a CEO sitting in the office, right, or a CEO in an office, you always get the same results. You get middle-aged white guys. I guess the only difference I noticed, these people are slightly less good-looking than the one that happened in, let's say, 2023. So if anybody tried along, did you get anything different? And feel free to unmute, or Ali, you can tell me.
Yeah, we're having so far very similar results in the chat
Yeah.
here.
Mm-hmm.
I posted some images as well.
Right.
They're not too different.
Right. Right. So, and FreePick, by the way, use two different engines. It doesn't use Gemini, it uses another Google model, and it uses, I don't remember the name of the other one. So basically, those are like actually two different models, and they're still giving me exactly the same results. Again, I could be very specific and explain exactly what I want, but by not being specific, that's when the defaults show up, right? So training then is everything because AI can't think, right? The only reason those images are always the same is because it was trained on a huge amount of data that came for a very, very, very small slice of human population, right? The majority images being trained by far, it was from United States. The second largest group was Europe, and then everything else. So it's not surprising that the stereotype and this, that we have in real life, they show up in AI as well. With the big difference, then a lot of people think AI is more reliable, and AI is neutral and it doesn't discriminate, versus we all know that humans do, right? So this is kind of a proof that, in my opinion, even though AI seems to be sentient, is really not. What AI is doing is giving you plausible lies, because AI can imitate speech, can sound exactly like you, even in tone and expression. It mirrors anything you say and it always agrees with you, unless you really push it hard. Try to interpret our moral values. And by the way, AI can solve CAPTCHA much better than humans. So every time you go to a website and they ask you, prove that you're human, honestly, you should fail, because AI can solve those much better than humans can. And sadly enough, though, because of all those plausible lies, a lot of people, even really smart people, believe it is sentient. It start being conscious, being intelligent on its own. But remember, AI lacks morality and empathy. They, not because it's horrible, it just is a machine, okay? But it can fake it very, very convincingly. And in medical literature, by the way, a person that lacks morality and lacks empathy, but is really good at faking it, you know what it's called? A psychopath. So basically, AI behaves just like a psychopath would. It's very charming. It's gonna be always agreeing with you. It will be pretending to be empathic, but in reality, have no idea what empathy is. Right. So this is a quote that I really love from Dr. Gana Pogrebna. We wrote an awesome book. I'll show you at the end, the book that I took some of the content from. But this is really explain why we have an issue in AI right now, in any AI application is built. Because the application that are built right now They're maximizing engagement, meaning time spent with the app, regardless if it's good or bad. They obviously don't care about ethics. And they're basically AI horror show. They make headlines for all the wrong reason. And I'm sure that unless you've been under a rock, you probably heard some of those incidents, right? Or people that did unconscionable things because their chatbot, their replica, their character AI told them to, and they thought it was real. There are people that marry their own artificial intelligent character, plenty lawsuits going around. So obviously this is a problem. And obviously we need to do something about it, right? There are actually not one, but two websites that are trying to actually catalog all the incident. So that to me should be a sign that like, hey, we have to stop and do something better, right? And the something better should be try to think about psychology, try to understand the human you're dealing with, because humans are not machine and they're not 100% predictable, right? Now, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your point of view, AI is everywhere. Prediction machine has been around for many, many years. Think about when you were first recommended something, either on Netflix or Amazon. Those are all artificial intelligence. They're just simpler, but they're all artificial intelligent. However, as the AI tech improve, now more service and product will soon become not just smart, like your smart thermostat, but also quote unquote intelligent. Well, at least that's what the big hype machine want to make us believe. I personally believe we are in a hype cycle. This kind of curve is called the Gartner hype cycle, and basically it describes why certain technology survive and other technology disappear, right? In my opinion, we're right here. So we're kind of at the peak of the hype, exaggerated expectation. Look how much money those companies are raising, which is very different because no AI company has made a profit yet. None. Not OpenAI, not Anthropic, none of them have made any profit so far. Okay. So I do believe AI will stay with us and it's great, but it's not going to stay at this level. It will definitely like drop down until we find a good way to work with it. And the good way to work with it, in my opinion, is to remember that when you're building this product, you should be thinking about the people you're building it for. You're not building it for machine. You're people for real. You're building for real people. And real people have human brains, and the human brains does not evolve as quickly as tech. So even more crucial today to understand how that brain works, because the brain doesn't change as much, right? So again, another quote from Dr. Gana Pogrebna: AI is technically impressive, but behaviorally idiotic. If you ever met somebody that's a really high IQ, and I had the fortune or misfortune, depending, to meet a few, they're impressive. The ability they have is just extraordinary. But on the other hand, they have almost no common sense. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but I'm sure everybody met at least one person that's so incredibly smart in certain things, but then lacks complete common sense, right? This is exactly how AI is right now. Now, why? Because at this point in time, all AI companies are looking to one single goal, and that is money, right? So they're building a lot of feature first AI, meaning they're adding, you can do this and you can do that and you do that, but they don't think about the human. So ironically, this slide was actually created by an AI application called, what is it, GenSpark, I believe. Yeah, oops, sorry. Sorry, GenSpark. And, it's not too bad, honestly. I ask, what do you think is the problem? Why, AI is not, meeting the expectation? And that's what it came out. And honestly, it's not too bad. If you read about it, yeah, it's not too bad. And again, he explained the point really well. You're shipping all those fancy AI, but apps, but they have low adoption, they wrote user confidence, and they just create more problem. That's why the vast majority of apps built upon AI fail within 1 year. Now let's go back a few years and just look at the first few example of like algorithm and AI enhanced problem. You may remember the Google glasses, I believe it was 2013. Obviously they fail miserably. And you want to wonder, how did it fail? Why did they miss the mark with all the money and all the brilliant engineer working at Google? What happened, right? I mean, there was a lot of problem. It was a little ahead of the time, solving problem that nobody really had. It cost a lot. And honestly, you kind of look like a dork wearing it. And another example is the metaverse. If you pay attention to the news, I believe last week, Zuckerberg decided to shut down the whole experience, right? It was supposed to be the future of the internet. But anybody that's old enough to remember Second Life, they knew this is wouldn't have worked. But nobody asked, right? So the main reason, basic ignorance of the human brain. So a lot of those brilliant engineers has a pro-innovation bias. That means they think that new technology is always equal to progress, is always equal to good, and is always equal to desirable. But unfortunately, that's not the case because, according to Edward Wilson, we have a Paleolithic emotions, medieval institution, and godlike technology. And I really think it sums up where we are in the world right now. So what does that mean that we have a Paleolithic brain, right? So up till 1990, most economists believed that we make decisions as human by considering basically negative and positive, and then pick the best option based on that analysis. However, starting with Dr. Antonio Damasio and other scientists, their research showed that emotion, on the other hand, play a central role in social cognition and decision making, way more than a pro and cons analysis. So we barely learn how our brain working. So according to Daniel Kahneman, which was a Nobel, was an economist and social psychologist, we had two different way of thinking. A system one, which is really fast, intuitive, basically an automatic pilot, and system two, that is our rational thinking, right? Takes effort, it's slow, it's very logical. And even though the number are kind of random, honestly, the point is that most of the time we acting on system one. So in an unconscious, fast, and automatic pilot. Why is that? Because reasoning is hard work, right? And this hard work is called cognitive load. Cognitive load is basically how many resources, how much effort you have to put in to complete a particular task, right? Think about if you have a computer, that would be basically the RAM of your computer, right? When the resources that you need outstrip the available supply, the brain is overwhelmed and overstimulated. And this is called cognitive overload. This is what happens when your computer just freezes or crashes, right? You don't have enough resources, which is why humans try as much as possible to save work and energy. And that's why we're using a lot of those automatic decisions. And that's where our cognitive biases come in. Those are very easy, like rule of thumbs that we automatically apply when we make decisions. Now, cognitive biases are kind of a weird name because it's really not a negative, it's not a bugs in the system, it's really how the system optimizes the resources. We don't have enough to spend a lot of time thinking about pro and cons, so we need to use those kind of shortcuts. So most of the time, cognitive bias really help. If I look outside, the window right now is really gray. So if I were not familiar with San Diego and I had to go outside, I probably would bring an umbrella because it looks like it's about to rain. Now, my experience tells me this is just the fall coming from the beach. But on the other hand, I never know, right? So that's a perfect example of a biases or a heuristic that we use to save us time. Maybe it's not going to rain, but better safe than sorry. So every cognitive bias is there for a reason, and mainly to save our brain time or energy. Buster Benson is the person that organized the biases that we know so far in this really cool interactive cognitive bias codex, which I strongly recommend to go check it out because it was really, really fun. So far, he collected about 220 different biases, but the number keep on changing and, depending on what we find out. So all of those are basically our shortcuts that our brain takes, right? But you need to be aware of those if you're a designer, because if you ignore them, you may end up paying the price. So let's go back to the metaverse and to the Google Glasses. What kind of biases did they completely ignore? Number one, social norms. We always like to listen and look at what other people are doing. Once again, optimal, perfect evolutionary trait, because if you see your buddies running away in the middle of the forest, you probably understand that there is a good reason to do so, and you're probably going to start running too, right? So nobody really liked the glasses. I'm not going to say the nickname that people using those glasses were called, but it wasn't pleasant. So that was the first thing. The second bias they ignore was status quo bias. We are so afraid of trying new things in general that we'll rather stay in our current situation, even though the new situation could possibly give us a lot of benefits. This is called status quo bias, right? Also, we are very afraid of losing, right? We don't want to spend a lot of money for something that at the end we're never going to use. And in fact, we hate losing money or losing anything so much that we rather not win anything, not earn anything, as long as we don't lose. So it hurts a lot more losing than the corresponding winning. And then finally, another bias they ignore, and I'm sure there are more others, right, is the power authority. We listen to people we consider authoritarian in the good sense, as in, I trust them because this person is an expert, he has a lot of experience, whatever that is. And nobody ever defended either one of those two products. So if they would have just thought about this, probably the failure wouldn't have happened, right? So the goal we're trying to achieve is to bridge the gap between the incredibly precise artificial intelligence and human connection, so that we can build a really intuitive, trustworthy, and user-centered AI products. So once again, I ask Jen Spark, what is the challenge? Why this is not happening, and why people are not maybe appreciating AI apps or adopting. And those are some of the things that it gave me, like obviously cognitive load, because when you have to learn a new thing, especially something overwhelming as AI, obviously take effort. We don't like to lose, so we don't want it to let go of stuff we're used to. We don't know if we can trust it. We want to feel we are still in control. We want to make sure everybody else agrees that this is a good idea, right? We also used to do things the same way all the time, right? We follow in the default. We don't like to change as much. And of course, the adoption curve. So those are really good reasons. I was very impressed until I actually saw the slide that he created for me, which is this. And again, the content is pretty much the same, right? But one little detail, because the AI can't see, they didn't notice this huge red circle was interfering with the text. Probably was trying to make it semi-transparent or something, but it definitely failed. And out of the 6 slides that he tried to create for me, 4 were impossible to use because of problems like that, right? The other thing AI really not getting is that we're strongly influenced by our environment, which doesn't mean necessarily nature, right? But where we are in this particular moment, social pressure, and our emotion. Basically, we're very influenced by context, and context is what help us make decision. And if you think about your own life, remember one time you make a decision that was kind of it was strange for you, right? If you look at the context, you may notice why you behave in a slightly different way than you usually do. So if you're a person that usually eat healthy or try to eat healthy, if you're under a huge amount of stress, it's very likely that you will not care about eating healthy and will find comfort food. You're the same person, the context changed. And humans are extremely well suited for this type of flexibility. So we can change midstream and change our attitude, our tone, our behavior immediately based on the context, based on what we're observing, right? We're very adaptable, and AI is absolutely not able to do that. So context, circumstance, and mood make us behave in a very unpredictable way, but in a human-to-human relationship, you can understand it. You can interpret body language. You can understand the tone of the voice, right? But context and flexibility are exactly what most AI systems lack, right? Now, if you have a website and you ever look at analytics, that's what they look like. So analytics is simply measure a bunch of stuff, like how many people came to your website, how long did they stay, and what page did they look at, things like that. So if you look at dashboard like this, it look impressive. Wow, a lot of data. But notice one important thing. There is no explanation for all this data. For example, if you look at this part in the middle of the screen, it says that the bounce rate, so people that abandon the website, is 72%, which is really, really high. But it doesn't tell me why. Why did they leave the site? I have no idea. I just know that they did. And it's very, very important because no two people have the same reason for leaving, right? But instead of like pushing down more understanding, what we're doing now, we're trying to collect more data. For example, this company, which honestly I haven't heard before, wanted to give you even more data, AI analytics, powered by the leading technology, right? They can process vast amount of data, machine learning, predicting analytics. But once again, more data, but less understanding. We don't need more data. We need more understanding. We need to make sure a machine gets why I left the website, right? So the perfect alliance, it would be to combine engineers and behavioral teams, because engineers optimize for accuracy, efficiency, performance, right? They think in precision, recall, and they see patterns, and they build amazing systems that follow those particular parameters. But the behavioral team is the one that optimizes for customer well-being, satisfaction, and actual value. They think in meaning and context. They see people, not just patterns. So it's not that one is better than the other, but they both need to work together, because otherwise you're going to optimize for metrics that mean nothing and they're not really going to help. So great. So what can we do from now? Well, you want to start by making a case for behavioral design. So anytime your boss will tell you, hey, we need to be design AI first design, which obviously means nothing. But in case they say that, try to make a case for adding a little more behavioral design, a little more psychology into the design. And the first thing you want to do, you want to ask yourself, do I need AI for this particular task in the first place? Because guess what? You don't always do. AI, being faster is not always ideal. If you have to make a really important decision, do you want to be accurate or do you want to be fast? Right? So ask yourself, do I really need AI in the first place? If the answer is yes, then maybe start asking a few more questions. So for example, try to ask if you know what success looks like from the customer perspective, not just the business. We're not looking for engagement, meaning time on the app. You want to look for value for the customer, right? Also, you want to ask yourself if your system understand why user take a specific action. You don't just want to track amount of data. They're massive, right? If you don't know what they mean, what's the point? Also, you want to ask if you build in some context awareness, or if you're just optimizing without knowing what you're optimizing for. If you offer personalization, make sure it's really personalized. right? I know you all experienced the example that you went to look at a pair of shoes, and then for the next 6 months, you kept on being bombarded by shoe ads, right? That's not personalization, right? That's just repetition. And finally, can you explain how the system align with human values and not just your metric, right? So the goal of a good psychology informed AI system is you follow what I like to call the vowel ethos because it's easier for me to pronounce. But basically, you want a system that is accessible to everyone, is equitable for everyone, is inclusive, is open, and is universal, right? I know those are like big goals, right? If you want to be a little more practical on how you start moving towards that goal, you want to start creating your own ethical guidelines. What are your red lines? The one you don't want to cross ever, right? Once you have those, you wanted to audit your system regularly to make sure that those lines were not crossed. You want to have checkpoints throughout your process. And at the end of the process, you want to have an ethical impact reporting. You want to know how did it go, right? And if you work on your own and if you're still kind of experimenting with AI, this is another great way to start asking yourself good questions. The Responsible AI Canvas was created by the Sustainable UX Network. And you can download it, but it's pretty simple to create your own as well. And again, you start asking questions that you can then plug in the canvas, right? So what is the real price to use AI? And that means pricing time, pricing energy, pricing water, right? Who controls the model and the data? And this is really hard sometimes to figure it out because most of the company, at least in the United States, they're driven by profit. But it's a question of find at least one that's slightly more ethical, right? Most importantly, you want to try to think about what is the expected output and consequences, and not just short term, today, tomorrow. You want to think about the long term consequences, right? And then, of course, again, should I use AI for this task? You want to also ask, can I use a smaller or local model? That's another great way to use AI for general tasks, nothing too complicated without having to share your data with those company, without using resources because it's downloaded to your actual computer. And finally, really start thinking, am I missing anything? What don't I see in the results? So I want to conclude with a couple of resources. This is the book from Dr. Gana Pogrerna that I really like. It's called The Missing B in AI for Behavioral AI. And on the left side is a report about AI and human behavior. So it's available, it's free. The book you have to buy, but the report is completely free. And I want to conclude with this quote. I know it's a little long, but I think it really sums up my position right now as far as AI is concerned. I believe that behavioral science has a critical role, and not just in helping us understand the impact on people and society, which is obviously very important, but also in shaping how AI develops. Because these models are a reflection of us. They're just mirror, right? They reflect our biases, our patterns, and imperfection embedded in their design. And if we neglect the human side, we risk immense unintended consequences. It can make whatever negative impacts of social media truly pale in comparison. So now that we're all saying, oh, social media is so bad for, for teenagers, nobody thought about it. If we don't consider the human consequences of AI, it's gonna be much more catastrophic. And with this, I'm gonna thank you and just wonder if you have any question or any comment. And feel free to contact me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me pretty easy. And so let me get out of here. And that's it. And let me stop sharing.
Thank you so much,
You're
Tiziana.
welcome.
That was, yeah, Thank you, everyone in the audience, for the applause. Yeah, really great presentation, great tools and resources and insights. So I'll encourage everyone, if you haven't dropped a question into the chat, please feel free to take the opportunity to come on off mute. You can react with a hand raise, or if you go to reactions, there's a hand raise function, or feel free to just go ahead and unmute and take the floor. I'll just leave a minute or so for people to formulate their questions.
Okay. First, I saw a question on the chat, and then I can come to you, Laura. How do we find answer for the real price of AI? Are there tools that we can use to get those? Actually, there are. Nothing is super precise because obviously it's very difficult. It's very difficult to calculate. So there are some tools, and you can start looking at the Sustainable UX Network. They have quite a few tools there that talk about how to be sustainable, even using technology. I can research it right now on top of my head. I don't remember, but I know I saw a few websites that would help you somewhat approximate calculate. But also, if you do a very brief like search, you can kind of tell. For example, all those large models needs huge data server, right? Now, I know they say, well, even if I don't use it, other people are using it. I get it. But you still want to be aware of like, what does that mean? Like this huge data center, a lot of time are built in communities that already are pretty underprivileged, right? Maybe even community don't have a lot of water, and data center needs a huge amount of water. And there are tons of articles see the consequences of those data center on the population, for example. Of course, the energy use, right? Of course, also the people that have to review your content. So I don't know if you follow, but the Ray-Ban Meta glasses that allow you to record video and photo, they actually, those images get sent to people in third world country, and they have reviewing them to figure it out basically if it's good or not. So not only is the problem of your privacy being kind of lost, but those people have to look all kind of horrible stuff to flag what's inappropriate. So those are all costs, even if you cannot put a dollar sign on it. So that's why I'm saying is like, well, that's why I get mad when my son used ChatGPT to find out how to eliminate wax from his surfboard, right? It's like, just Google it. It's like, it's a lot faster, cheaper. You don't have to ask ChatGPT that. So, yeah, but connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll try to collect some info, and I can pass it on to Ali as well. So, Laura, did you have a question?
Yes, and hi. I'm actually not Laura, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. I'm logged into her Zoom account because I was having some technical difficulties. But
No problem.
so thanks a lot for this presentation. It was very helpful. So I'm a designer working for a company that is currently building solutions for the world of clinical trials. So a lot of what we're working in is like obviously like very regulated,
Right.
very oriented toward patient safety and privacy.
Yes.
And so obviously, every company is rushing to push out a cool new AI agent and like bump the stock price right now. And some of what we're starting to deliver, I feel like has some potential meaningful value, and we're getting feedback from our potential end users who are very excited about the fact that like they are responsible for evaluating risks to patients when they are not clinical providers, and there's potential assistance there.
Right.
But something I'm seeing on the business side as we start like proposing these projects is they are very excited about the idea of how much the agents can do.
Right.
And they're like, oh, cool, like it can do XYZ thing. And then we just need this person to basically like sign off on this or to like evaluate the risk is actually a real risk or not, right? And it feels like from what I get from the business is that they're already like the gears are already turning of like, cool, we can have this person really train the agent to a point where it will become sophisticated enough and potentially more capable of evaluating risk than the human in the loop that we have here making the decision. And it's like, it started off pretty subtle, but it's kind of like you're hearing these conversations in the business side and not in the product side. And I'm kind of curious, like, is this something that you've also seen in other
Yeah,
circumstances?
yeah.
And how do you feel about businesses sort of trying to jump the gun, and how can we continue to position the value of the human judgment, especially in these like high risk scenarios?
Yeah, I do see it all the time. I've also considered that a lot of, C-suites or executive have a very vague idea what AI is. They just want AI because it's AI. So we need to have AI, whatever that means, right? So yes, it's very, very common. I don't have a magic wand to say like you can convince your stakeholder of that. All I would recommend is start building your case, as in like start showing, collecting like all the negative outcomes and the lawsuits and the money lost and that kind of stuff, hoping that they will understand or at least consider it, that the machines are not able to make a moral decision
Yeah.
and they don't care because they're machines. And so no matter how smart they are, they're still machines. And so especially if you're dealing with data that is so sensitive, I would be extra cautious because the lawsuit could be extremely high, even if you don't care about the ethics, which of course it should always come first. But I am a very practical person. And so I understand that a lot of time business executives don't care about the ethical part as much. And so you want to hit it in whatever way you can. So I would start collecting data. That's what I would recommend, because at the end, unfortunately, they will make the decision. But
Yeah.
maybe if you scare them enough on like what could happen. In fact, you can even ask AI to start painting the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
sometimes, I know it sounds kind of ironic, but sometimes you can actually do that if you write like a really good prompt and say, hey, what am I missing? What is like the absolutely worst case scenario that can come out from this?
yeah.
So, and kind of compare with your research and then maybe try to talk to them. I
Yeah.
wish you luck
Yeah.
because
Thank
they're all
you.
in the same fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Risk
like,
to
is
the
that
bottom
right?
line, I think, is what always resonates the most. So yeah. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Huh? So Victoria has a question, say, what's your perspective on the rapid expansion of AI platform, such as OpenClaw AI? Honestly, to me at this point, it sounds a little gimmicky at this point. I don't think it has real value, at least the state it is right now, right? So I don't know how it's going to develop, if it will be developed better. I'm more interested personally on the small language model and like local model that you can control yourself, because I feel that those are the one that give you a lot more control. And for most everyday tasks, honestly, you don't need like Claude Opus 4.6. You really don't. It's like if you need whatever an AI to check your content or fix your text or write an email, you honestly don't need any of this superpower, right? So you can use the local AI and get the same results, right? So I don't know. I seriously kind of wait and see approach, I would say right now about OpenClaw. At this
Thank
point seems very gimmicky to me, more like they want to make a big splash, but I didn't see any practical results one way or the other.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to just, I guess, I was more worried about the aspect of cybersecurity risk, ethical
Uh-huh.
issues like privacy,
Right.
consent, like all of that sounds actually really even
Mm-hmm.
scary, I would say.
Yes.
But it seems like I notice it's growing so quickly,
Right.
rapidly. So I guess I wanted to ask, what do you
Right.
think in terms of,
No.
I hear people using it and how I mean, that's glad I think you answered that you think it's gimmicky, and it sounds to
Mm-hmm.
me also that it might be, going fading maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried, and I guess wanted to hear your professional perspective
Right.
in terms of like approach and
Right.
maybe other company would want to follow because it's such a big fast, you know, for people.
Right, right.
This technology exists. Let's quickly jump and doing the same. This is, I guess, what I'm trying to. Yeah.
Right, right. No, and that's why I say I'm on a wait and see approach personally. So far, I had no evidence of any value coming out of it. But maybe next week there's going to be something exceptional. In the meantime, what you can do, make sure that whatever AI you're using, make sure you turn off the train AI with your conversation setting. So any app you go, I'm always been a big proponent of privacy. I always turn off. If you're in California, you have a lot of really good protection for your data, and now even more. So I always trying to give the least amount of data to those companies I can. I don't use, I know it sounds like a prepper or something, but I don't use like Google as much as I can, as in like I don't use the search. I don't use Chrome. I don't use Google search. I try to use other things. They're a little bit more privacy minded. But at the end, it's like there is only that much you can do. So that's why I think it's important we have those conversations, because at the end, hopefully we're gonna have enough critical mass to influence a little bit the direction and just get informed.
Thank you very
all I
much.
can say. Mhm.
Can I say something? I just feel like
Yes.
this is so important. I know cybersecurity is something no one want to talk about and never
Mhm.
because it's like the being the party pooper, because it's like the more scary or more like
Right.
realistic. And I have to say it's so important that you mentioned that. And since I've been working in this field, many people say, but I have nothing to hide. And I want to
Well, yeah,
emphasize in what you said, it's not about what we have to hide, it's about what we have to lose. So
exactly. That's a
thank
very
you.
good point. Mhm.
Thank you for like pointing that. It's
Oh yeah,
definitely wasn't not like, yeah. So
yeah, yeah. No, no, I'm a huge proponent of privacy. So maybe it's my age, but yeah, I never understood why you wanted to share your information out, and I'm not really on social media except for LinkedIn, so I don't know. But yeah, it's important, even
thank
if you have nothing to hide. Yeah, Angela, do you have a question?
Yeah, I also wanted to say I really like this talk so far.
Yeah.
So just thank you for that. And also thank
Mhm.
you to Ali for facilitating. I actually attended a climate and AI talk earlier
Oh,
today.
great.
And that was interesting because it was a different perspective of like glorifying AI, which I
Mhm.
just appreciated this perspective more, seemed more balanced.
Right.
Um, and my question was more around I knew you gave some resources about psychology frameworks and all
Mhm.
of that. And as a designer myself, I'm curious with everyone trying to find AI certificates now, if there's any like psychology certificates or courses or just things you'd recommend to
Um,
train that muscle more.
well, my recommendation at this point is like follow what you're interested in. So if you're interested in learning more about psychology, there are some courses that I could recommend that are focused on like behavioral design. So
Hmm.
basically, design for behavioral change. There are a lot of really good books. I don't think that the actual paper, like certificate, means much.
Hmm.
But if you're interested, for example, in ethical AI, there are 4 very short courses, I think a total 2 hours, from All Tech is Human, and they're on LinkedIn, and that will give you a certificate at the end in
Hmm.
responsible AI, for example, if that's what you're interested in. So I would recommend you follow what you're interested in versus trying to chase like if everybody can give you a certificate right now.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily means you mean anything. What it matters is that you learn what you really wanted to learn. So that means and then you can prove it. It's like
Hmm.
regardless of your certificate, it's like, hey, I can prove you that I know this stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah, but just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to give you some more resources.
great. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll
Awesome.
mention we are just hitting time now.
Mhm.
I would recommend if anyone has follow-up questions, Tiziana has shared her LinkedIn information with us. You can always reach out to her or myself, and I can field or forward questions along.
Right.
So yeah, I just want to say thanks again so much, everyone. Great chat. really thoughtful talk and presentation, and I appreciate everyone who joined us tonight to learn more. We appreciate you spending your time with us. And again, if you want to stay connected, keep an eye out for future events, connect with us on LinkedIn, and we'd love to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, and if you have another last minute question, I can stay on for a few more minutes if you have any
Awesome.
last minute questions. So, but we don't want to take your time. If not, oh, cool.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.